The story begins not with a cheer, but with a silence that defines the next 7 years. One by one, the names are called: Hermione Granger, Ronald Weasley, and finally, Harry Potter. Each time the sorting hat touches their heads, the result is instantaneous. The Gryffindor table remains motionless, their faces a mask of shock and perceived betrayal. At the Slytherin table, there is no welcoming applause, only cold, suspicious stares. The 3 children sit together in a tight, defensive cluster, surrounded by a sea of green and silver that doesn't want them there. They are the boy who lived, a blood traitor, and a mudblood. In this house, they are not royalty, they are targets. They are loathed by their housemates and abandoned by the rest of the school. Ron deals with the public shame of being a traitor to his family. Hermione is isolated by her blood status. Harry is a target for older students who view him as the reason their families lost everything. Their first year is not about glory, it is about avoiding the shadows of the corridors. They spend their time in the library, building a defensive wall of knowledge. This period culminates in a Pact of Necessity. One late night in the Slytherin common room, while the rest of the house sleeps, the 3 children huddle together by the fire. They make a solemn, whispered vow to one another, a promise that they are the only 3 people in the world they can trust. They look at one another and speak the words that will define the next 7 years. Together or not at all. They bind their fates in that moment, realizing that alone they will be picked off, but together they are a fortress. As their second year begins, the Chamber of Secrets is opened, and the trio's isolation turns into a siege. The school's hatred toward Harry reaches a fever pitch, and the corridors belong to the students. They are subjected to preemptive strikes from every house. Gryffindors, believing they are being brave, ambush them in staircases. Older Slytherins, wanting to distance themselves from the Dark Lord's slayer, vandalize their belongings and leave threatening messages on their dorm walls. They are treated like a plague, cornered in the library and whispered about in every hall. The breaking point occurs during the dueling club. When the snake is summoned and Harry speaks Parseltongue, the fragile hope that he might be one of them is shattered. The hall goes silent. Harry is initially shocked and horrified by the reaction, realizing that the fear in their eyes is now permanent. However, in the privacy of the dungeons, Hermione stops his retreat. She points out that the students will never stop the bullying as long as they think the trio is a group they can kick. She suggests a radical change in tactics. If the school has already decided he is the heir of Slytherin, he should let them believe it. She argues that fear is a better shield than innocence. If the school is terrified that Harry might set a monster on them, they will finally leave the trio alone. From that moment on, they stop hanging their heads. They start walking with the cold, regal confidence of those who own the shadows. The atmosphere shifts from Cold War to tragedy when Hermione is found petrified. For the first time, the fortress is breached. When Ginny Weasley is taken into the chamber, a panicked and desperate Ron begs Harry to go down. This isn't about being a hero, it's about the Pact. Harry enters the chamber to save the only family Ron has left. Face to face with the memory of Tom Riddle, Harry demonstrates why he is the true heir. He does not slay the Basilisk, instead he uses his Parseltongue to tame it, realizing that this creature is the ultimate weapon to ensure Hermione is never hurt again. He saves Ginny to honour his word to Ron, but he leaves the beast alive in the deep. The year ends with the trio no longer as victims, but as the undisputed leaders of Slytherin House. Harry has the monster, and the school finally knows better than to touch them. The third year is defined by a singular cold focus: revenge. While the rest of the school panics over the threat of the escaped murderer, Sirius Black, Harry is driven by a need to settle a blood debt. To him, Sirius represents the ultimate violation of the Pact of Loyalty, the man who sold Harry's parents to their deaths. Harry reminds Ron and Hermione of their own vow of survival. He makes it clear that this isn't just his fight, it is an attack on the very concept of the family they have built for themselves. Together, they use Hermione's surgical research and Ron's knowledge of pureblood hideouts to track Sirius. They don't want justice, they want an execution. When they finally corner Sirius in the Shrieking Shack, the confrontation is primed for blood. But as the truth of Peter Pettigrew's survival and the long-standing frame-up is revealed, Harry's rage shifts into a dark, piercing clarity. He doesn't see a criminal, he sees a man who was abandoned by everyone he ever trusted. He sees a version of what could happen to them if their own bond ever broke. Instead of turning Sirius in, the trio claims him as their own. Sirius, seeing the hard, calculated edge in his godson, realizes these children have already been forged in a fire that traditional heroes wouldn't understand. He settles secretly in Hogsmeade, becoming their shadow mentor. He begins to teach them grey magic, ancestral powerful spells of the House of Black that were never meant for schoolchildren. He doesn't teach them to be good, he teaches them to be untouchable. By the 4th year, the trio has moved from surviving Slytherin to ruling it. When Harry's name emerges from the Goblet of Fire, the school doesn't see a victim, they see a threat. Harry doesn't compete for the glory of the school, he competes to demonstrate absolute dominance. Under Sirius's secret tutelage, Harry's magic becomes surgical and lethal. Hermione acts as his lead strategist, dismantling the tasks before they even begin by finding every loophole in the ancient rules. Ron manages the house, ensuring the Sovereign's reputation remains untarnished and that the whispers of the other schools are brought back to Harry. The finale in the graveyard is the final death of Harry's childhood. In the night of the 3rd task, Harry witnesses the rebirth of Voldemort. He sees the gathering of the Death Eaters, the parents of his own housemates, and he records every face and every name. Using the grey magic Sirius taught him, Harry holds his ground against the Dark Lord, surviving not through luck, but through the cold application of power. He returns to the Hogwarts grounds, but he is silent. He bypasses the crowds and goes straight to the dungeons to meet with the only 2 people he trusts. In the dark of the Slytherin common room, Harry tells Ron and Hermione that the Dark Lord has returned. The atmosphere is heavy, but it is Hermione who cuts through the tension with a cold political foresight. She tells them exactly what will happen next. The Ministry will deny it. She explains that Fudge is too weak to face a war, and will choose the safety of a lie over the danger of the truth. She argues that they cannot rely on the school or the government for protection anymore. She declares that if they want to survive the coming storm, they need to turn their house into a fortress, and their peers into a weapon. The return of the Dark Lord is the signal to begin building an army of their own. In Year 5, the term begins with a cold, calculated purge of the Slytherin social order. Harry uses the names he saw in the graveyard to identify the inner circle families. He approaches the students whose parents were not there, the families who have been sidelined by the Malfoys for generations. Harry offers them a choice: continue as second-class citizens under the Dark Lord's legacy, or join the Serpent's Guard. The house splits down the middle. However, even as the Guard forms, a sub-hierarchy emerges. While the students fear Harry and admire Hermione's intellect, they look at Ron with a lingering prejudice. To the noble Slytherins, he is still a Weasley, a blood traitor in hand-me-down robes. Despite the pact, Ron finds himself fighting for respect, even within his own army. While Dolores Umbridge hunts for Dumbledore's army, she ignores the Slytherin dungeons, assuming they are inherently loyal to the Ministry. This provides the trio with the perfect smokescreen. In the deepest sub-levels of the castle, the Serpent's Guard begins their training. They do not learn schoolbook charms. They train in grey magic, tactical combat and mental shielding. Harry is the undisputed general. Hermione is the architect, designing the wards that keep them hidden. Ron is the drill sergeant, but he finds his authority constantly undermined. Younger students from old families question his orders, and he notices that they only truly listen when Harry or Hermione back him up. The Pact of Three feels increasingly like a duo and their lieutenant. As the year progresses, the distance between the three grows. Harry, fueled by his loss of his parents and the return of Voldemort, becomes a distant sovereign figure. Hermione becomes obsessed with the magical grey theory Sirius sends them. Ron is left with the grunt work of the guard: logistics, patrols, and discipline. He hears the whispers in the common room. Students call him Potter's pet, or the Weasley lackey. He begins to realise that in the new world they are building, Harry will be king and Hermione will be his sage, but Ron might just be another Weasley who followed a greater man. The seeds of resentment are sown, not by hate, but by a desperate need to be seen. The mission to the Department of Mysteries is the first true deployment of the Serpent's Guard. They move with a cold military precision that shocks the Order of the Phoenix members, who arrive to assist. However, the tactical advantage evaporates when the Death Eaters pin Harry down, cornering him near the Veil. In the chaos, a Death Eater prepares to strike a killing blow while Harry is distracted. Ron, seeing his brother-in-arms about to fall and fueled by years of being the lesser member of the trio, doesn't hesitate. He doesn't use a stunner or a grey magic shield. He points his wand and for the first time feels the true weight of his own power. He casts the killing curse. The green light illuminates the chamber, and for a heartbeat there is a horrific silence. Sirius Black, having witnessed the act, is not proud. He is appalled. He grabs Ron by the robes, shaking him, and scolds him with a visceral, panicked anger, screaming that they were meant to be better, that grey magic has limits, and that Ron has just extinguished his soul. Before the argument can finish, the battle surges back. In the moment of distraction and fractured focus, Bellatrix Lestrange strikes. Sirius is hit and falls through the veil. The man who was their mentor is gone, and his last words to Ron were a condemnation. The year ends in a state of grim mourning, but the grief is not shared equally. Harry and Hermione are consumed by the loss of the only adult who truly saw them, but Ron is consumed by the rejection. While Harry's fame grows and the school begins to look at him as the chosen one, Ron is left with the memory of Sirius's look of disgust. He saved Harry's life, and yet he was treated like a monster by the very man who taught them to walk in the shadows. The Serpent's Guard remains a formidable force, but the hierarchy has shifted. Ron is no longer just a lieutenant. He is a boy who knows he is capable of more darkness than even his leaders. The 6th year begins with a profound shift in Ron's demeanour. He is no longer content to be the third soul in the trio. He becomes obsessed with the concept of legacy. Lucius Malfoy, working through Draco, feeds his hunger by presenting Ron with evidence of the Weasleys' ancient pre-poverty status. He offers Ron a path to reclaim that glory, not as a blood traitor or a Potter lackey, but as the head of a restored great house. Ron's betrayal is not born of a desire to protect Harry or Hermione. It is born of a desire to finally stand above them. He begins to view his association with a half-blood and a Muggleborn as the very thing holding the Weasley name back in the mud. He starts meeting with the Malfoys in secret, trading internal secrets for the promise of a seat among the pureblood elite. Hermione, whose strategic mind has only sharpened in the wake of Sirius's death, notices the subtle change in Ron's loyalties. She doesn't confront him with emotion, she confronts him with a test. She provides Ron with a master list of elite students she claims have finally been recruited into the Serpent's Guard. In reality, the list is a phantom. These are students who have never been approached, high-profile names that would be irresistible targets for the Death Eaters. When these specific students begin reporting that they are being followed or scouted by Malfoy's inner circle, Hermione has her confirmation. The tension breaks on the night the Vanishing Cabinet is activated. As the Death Eaters flood into Hogwarts, the castle erupts into a multi-fronted war. Harry and Hermione find Ron in the shadow of the Great Hall. The confrontation happens in a terrifying heavy silence as the sound of the battle echoes from the astronomy tower. Hermione produces the Phantom List, and the realization hits Ron that he has been played. There is no apology from him. Instead, the resentment of 6 years of being lesser boils over. He admits his goal. He wanted a world where the name Weasley carried more weight than Potter. He chose the glory of his blood over the loyalty of the Pact. Just as the confrontation reaches its peak, a dark mark flares above the school. Dumbledore has fallen. The retreating Death Eaters, led by a triumphant Lucius Malfoy, sweep through the corridor to make their escape. Among them is Draco. He turns the corner first, pale and shaking, his wand still raised from the events on the tower. Harry doesn't hesitate. In a move of cold surgical precision, a reflex born of years of combat training, he fires a single wordless disarming charm. Draco's wand is ripped from his hand, spinning through the air until Harry catches it with a chilling ease. Lucius pauses, ignoring Harry and Hermione, as if they are already relics of a lost age. He holds out a hand to Ron, addressing him as Lord Weasley. He offers him the chance to leave the sinking ship, and to take his place among the victors. Ron looks at Harry and Hermione, who are looking at him with a coldness that mirrors the stone of the dungeons, and he realizes there is no way back into their circle. He chooses the promise of status, turning his back on them to flee with the Death Eaters. In the hollow, smoking aftermath of the battle, Harry and Hermione stand alone. They are no longer students, they are the remnants of a shattered command. They are approached by Aberforth Dumbledore. He does not offer comfort or condolences. He looks at them with the weary eyes of a man who has seen too many heroes fall. He hands Harry a heavy iron-bound box, containing the gaunt ring and the charred remains of Tom Riddle's diary. Inside, tucked beneath the ring, is a piece of aged parchment written in Albus Dumbledore's elegant, looping script. The message is cold and mathematical. He sought the most powerful magical number to anchor his soul. 7 horcruxes were created. 2 are now silenced. 5 remain. Harry and Hermione stare at the number, 7. To Harry, it is a hit list. To Hermione, it is a data point. She carefully folds the parchment, her mind already beginning to track the location and the logic of the remaining 5. The year ends with the 2 of them standing on the edge of the astronomy tower. They don't look toward the burrow, and they don't speak Ron's name. They look toward the horizon. They have the weapons, they have the list, and they have the grey ruthlessness to do what Dumbledore could not. Before we enter the final year, I have a question for you. Do you think Ron is justified in his betrayal, or is he a victim of Harry and Hermione's shadow? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are enjoying this timeline, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Anyway, enough from me, back to the story. With the Ministry under Voldemort's control, the war moves into the shadows. Ron is the lead hunter. He is given a high-ranking position within the Snatchers and Enforcers, specifically to hunt down the Serpent's Guard. Ron is fueled by a cold, vengeful energy. He remembers every student who looked down on him for being a blood traitor or a Potter lackey. He uses the names he remembers from their training sessions in the dungeons to hunt them down one by one. He isn't looking for Harry yet. He is systematically stripping Harry of his army, proving to the Dark Lord and to himself that he is the most efficient weapon in the arsenal. Harry and Hermione move through the country like ghosts. Their mission is no longer the hunt, but the collection. They have successfully retrieved the locket from the Ministry and the cup from Gringotts, and they have the ring from Dumbledore. But they have no way to destroy them. While hiding in a safe house provided by Aberforth, the math finally comes to the forefront. Hermione lays out Dumbledore's note. 7 horcruxes were created. She begins the count. The diary, destroyed. The ring, destroyed. We have the locket, the cup, and we know where the diadem is. Also, we know the snake. Hermione stops. Her hand trembles as she looks at the parchment. If Voldemort intended for a 6-part soul, he would have made 6 anchors. But the note says 7. That means there's a 7th piece he never intended to create. She connects the dots. The parcel tongue, the visions, the way Harry can feel the other anchors. The realization is a cold horror. Harry is the 7th horcrux. He is the unintentional anchor that ensures Voldemort can never truly die. With the weight of the horcruxes and the knowledge of Harry's true nature, they realize they can no longer run. They have the objects and they have the target. They need the weapon. Harry makes the call. They are going back to where it all began. They are going back to the Chamber of Secrets. The plan is to infiltrate the school, retrieve the diadem, and then descend into the pipes to let the Basilisk, the monster Harry tamed in Year 2, feast on the horcruxes. As they enter the Chamber of Secrets, Harry and Hermione stand before the Great Serpent, their collection laid out on the damp floor like a graveyard of Voldemort's ego. They take no chances. Harry places every anchor before the beast, the charred diary, the cracked ring, the locket, the cup, and the diadem. He speaks to command in Parseltongue, a low, vibrating hiss that fills the hall. The basilisk strikes with surgical violence. Its fangs shatter the gold and silver as if they were glass. As the serpent's teeth crushes the gold band on the gaunt ring, he doesn't swallow the debris. With a sharp flick of his tongue, the beast spits out a small, dark object at Harry's feet. It is the Resurrection Stone, now free from its horcrux-tainted casing. As Harry's fingers close around the cold, jagged surface, the atmosphere of the chamber shifts, and a familiar figure forms in the grey mist. Sirius Black stands before them. He doesn't offer a hug or a platitude. He looks at Harry and Hermione and nods at the stone. He says to Harry that he spent years learning the grey arts, but the anchors were only half the battle. To truly rule the shadows, he tells Harry you need to understand the hallows. He explains the trio of artifacts, the wand, the stone, and the cloak. He tells Harry that the stone he holds is the key to the veil, and that the cloak he has carried since Year 1 is the shield against the inevitable. He warns them that the Voldemort is obsessed with the wand, but only a true sovereign, one who has mastered the balance between life and death, can truly unite them. The moment Sirius finishes his explanation, the psychic backlash of the destroyed horcruxes hits. The scream of Voldemort's soul shards is deafening. The Dark Lord miles away feels the void where his immortality used to be. The shockwave ripples through the magical of the castle. Above them on the grounds, Ron feels the mark on his arm burn with a white-hot intensity. He knows exactly where they are. Sirius looks at the entrance of the chamber, his form beginning to flicker as the psychic energy of the chamber destabilizes. He tells him that he has the stone and the cloak. Now go take the wand from the man who doesn't deserve it. With a final look of pride, Sirius vanishes. Harry turns to Hermione, his eyes glowing with cold clarity of a man who finally sees the entire board. They have destroyed the anchors, they have the knowledge of the hallows, and the lead hunter is at the door. As Harry and Hermione emerge from the Great Lake entrance of the chamber, they do not find a battlefield of spells. They find a silent execution ground. The entire student body stands on the battlements and in the archways, frozen in terror. In the centre of the courtyard stands Lord Voldemort, surrounded by his Death Eaters. At his right hand is Ron. Harry and Hermione walk forward alone. They don't look like heroes. They look like the survivors of a long, cold war. Harry has the Resurrection Stone in his pocket, and the knowledge that he is the final target. Voldemort sees the clarity in Harry's eyes, and knows his anchors in the chamber are gone. He raises the Elder Wand and casts the Killing Curse. Harry falls, he hits the stone floor with a hollow thud, and for a long moment the only sound is the wind whistling through the ruined archways. As Harry dies, Voldemort's own body betrays him. He collapses to one knee, his breath rattling in his chest as his power flickers. Hermione acts instantly. She draws her wand and fires a curse at Nagini, aiming to end the cycle then and there. But the protective magic surrounding the serpent is too dense. Her spell hits the simmering cage and bounces off harmlessly, dissipating into the air. Ron stands frozen, watching Hermione's failure and looking down at the Dark Lord he has served for a year. He looks at Harry's motionless body, then at Hermione's desperate face. In that silence, he isn't a lord or a hunter anymore. He is just the boy from the dungeons who once promised that they were the only people in the world they could trust. Without a word, Ron turns his wand away from the students and towards the serpent. He doesn't hesitate. He pours every ounce of his original loyalty into the incantation, Avada Kedavra. The green light shatters the protection and hits Nagini, killing the final horcrux instantly. Sensing the death of his last anchor, Voldemort lunges at the traitor. He doesn't use a spell, he sweeps the Elder Wand in a brutal, jagged motion. The wand, humming with dark energy, cuts Ron's throat. Ron falls to the stone, clutching his neck. As he lies there, the world begins to blur. He sees movement in the centre of the courtyard. Harry Potter is standing up. The horcrux is gone, Harry is alive, and he is looking directly at Ron. Ron looks up at them, his eyes tracking the two people who were his only true family for 7 years. With his final breath, he whispers the words of the pact they made as outcasts in year 1. Together or not at all. The light leaves his eyes. As Ron's eyes go dim, the silence in the courtyard is absolute. Voldemort stands trembling, his breath coming in shallow, panicked gasps. He is no longer a god. He is a man with a tattered soul and no anchors left. Harry stands before him. He doesn't make a speech about love or the power of the light. He doesn't look like a hero. He looks like the king of the dungeons. His eyes are fixed on Voldemort with a terrifying, predatory clarity. The Dark Lord tries to raise the Elder Wand one last time, but the wand, sensing the hollow, broken thing holding it, refuses to strike the man who mastered death. Harry doesn't wait. He doesn't use a complicated curse. He reaches out with the grey combat arts he owned under Sirius, catching Voldemort's wrist and twisting. The Elder Wand falls to the stone. Harry speaks a single command, a jagged dark silver flash of magic. A spell from the Black Family archives strikes Voldemort in the chest. There is no explosion. The Dark Lord simply begins to unravel, his body turning to grey ash that the wind carries away into the ruined archways. The war is over. The Death Eaters who remained have fled into the Forbidden Forest or dropped their wands in terror. The teachers and the Order of the Phoenix begin to move forward, their faces filled with a mixture of relief and profound dread. They move to cheer, to embrace Harry, to reclaim their saviour, but Harry and Hermione don't look at them. They don't acknowledge the applause or the tears. They stand over Ron's body. The two of them a closed circuit that no one else can enter. When Professor McGonagall steps towards them, Harry raises a single hand. The gesture is so cold, so sovereign, that she stops in her tracks. He and Hermione pick up Ron's body together, as they have done everything, and walk toward the castle. They don't go to the hospital wing. They go down. They enter the Slytherin common room for the final time. It is empty, the green fire hissing in the hearth. Together, they lay Ron's body on the rug before the fireplace, in the exact spot where they had sat as children and made their first promise. Hermione reaches out and gently closes Ron's eyes. She doesn't cry. She hasn't cried since the night she was petrified in Year 2. She looks at Harry, and for the first time in 7 years, they are safe. But the safety tastes like ash. The room feels too large, the silence too heavy without the third heartbeat that had defined their lives. She stands up, her gaze shifting from the body of their friend to the green-lit windows of the Great Lake. She looks at the castle above them, then at the wizarding world beyond the stone walls, a world currently in ruins, led by people who failed to stop a monster. Her eyes burn with a cold, ruthless brilliance. There is a silent shared understanding between them. The war is over, but the work is not. There is a world to fix, and no one left with the strength to do it but them. Harry looks at her, then down at Ron, and finally at the Elder Wand resting in his hand. He understands the weight of the crown they are about to put on. He looks at Hermione, his voice a steady, sovereign vow. Together. Hermione meets his gaze, a ghost of a shadow passing over her face as she echoes the words that have been their armour and their curse since the very beginning. Or not at all. A haunting end to a version of a Harry Potter that feels more like a tragedy than a fairy tale. A massive thank you to everyone who stayed until the very end. It means the world to me. If you like this Slytherin trio, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the what-ifs of our favourite stories. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.